Hi, everybody. This is the William M. Starkville Planetarium's bi-weekly show, Spring Prairie Skies. We change it for every season. We don't run Spring Prairie Skies in November, I promise. My name is Eric Johnson. I'm the director of the planetarium, and with me is Waylena McCauley. She is the show producer.
Hi, everybody.
All right. Waylena is actually showing you where her heart lies in the building when she's not in the dome, and that is our beautiful solar window. We can't usually show that at 7 p.m. because the sun's not usually at the right angle for it, but that is what a wonderful noontime sun looks like in our lobby. It is just utterly fantastic. Anyways, you see that I've already started sharing my screen right now. And that is showing you how we will pretend that we're looking up at the sky. Normally we have a system of projectors to share all this info with you all. But instead, we're using Stellarium software. I'm actually on my work computer for this. I do this because that way I can watch the chat, and I would love to see what you folks have to say with anything. If you've got requests, you can remark about anything that you'd like to say for us. Maybe you can tell us about one cool thing you saw in the night sky in the last few weeks. I haven't given one of these shows in about a month, as a matter of fact, because 2 weeks ago, I was kind of in the audience and kind of just trying to see how much Spanish I could understand when we had Dr. Covarrubias give his show, Noche de Estrellas in Champagne, all right? So yeah, I maybe feel almost a little rusty. I mean, we were talking about just before the show began, what we might be able to see in the night sky. We'll start with the basics, and maybe we'll do a couple of other really fun constellations. Maybe I won't move the sky a whole lot. You will notice though, right over our neighbors at the theater, you can see one astronomical object is already up. So let's go ahead and click on that and get a nice closer look at it. Okay, there I've centered it. Let's zoom in. I think you all know what this fella is. It's the only astronomical object we can see during the day that's not the sun. And the reason we can do that is because of how close it is, one, and two, because of the amount of sunlight that it reflects back towards us. Okay, and that's what we're seeing right here. This is our moon, our lovely satellite that we can see throughout the year. You'll notice that the moon is not showing us a full circle. We can see kind of the dark side of the moon right there. If you're curious about the name that we give for this phase, we call this a gibbous moon, okay? It's slightly more than half full. It's not one of those fun crescents. Hopefully you're not getting too hungry by me just saying the word crescent. I hope you had dinner before you came. Waylena, did you have dinner before you came?
Yes.
Okay, good. Ellie, I hope you had dinner as well. All right. Okay, here I'll zoom in a little bit further so you can see some other features. When people are looking at the moon, you can normally see these little dark splotches on the surface, and because we love to see faces and things, some people even see a face in the moon that they call the man in the moon. There are other cultures that see other things in the moon. One that we love showing when we're in the dome is the fact that in Chinese cultures, they see a rabbit in the moon. And that's why some recent Chinese missions to the moon were called Chang'e, because that is named after the jade rabbit. That's part of that mythological tale. But you'll notice that those dark regions that are on the moon are actually what we call lunar seas, okay? It's only with a telescope that you can actually see the smaller craters on the moon's surface, and that's what's visible here as well. And those craters, they look really nice that way when you can get those nice close-up views. I have to tell you, I like seeing the moon when it's actually a little bit less illuminated than this, when you're around the first quarter phase or the third quarter phase, or if you're seeing a crescent, because the shadows that you can see on the moon can give you a really lovely sense of the three-dimensional surface on the moon. And that said, though, even looking at this gibbous moon would be a lot of fun. Makes me tempted to break out my telescope tonight to go and have a look at it. All right, I think that's enough rambling about the moon, but it was fun. So let's just zoom back out. I look over here in this direction and I see a brighter portion of the sky. It looks like our sun is actually sitting behind some trees. This is not the ideal place for us to go stargazing, simply because we're in the middle of town. There's a lot of clouds and light pollution that could be in the area here. I'm not going to get away from the clouds outside of town. I just misspoke. But I do like to try to get outside of town so that the skies are a little darker and we can see a few more things. So
admit it, Eric, there have been times where you look at the radar and you look at the satellite photos, and if the clouds are not around and it's close enough to drive to, admit it, you've driven to get away from clouds.
That's true. I could see that.
I have.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially now that we can have satellite information on our phones, so we can see where the clouds are. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if there's stuff that you cannot miss, like, you know, maybe you're trying to see some extraordinary like meteor shower or a comet or something, I can totally see the motivation for that. Or, you know, we had the conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn back in December. Yes. If that was something where we had to avoid the clouds, I might have considered doing that. I didn't have to because I could actually see it from the planetarium that evening. I know some people missed out on it because the clouds had rolled in right after I was done looking myself. So yeah, that definitely could happen. Anyways, where I've gone and taken us to is just a little bit outside of town. We're southwest of Champaign with this view. This is where the CUAS operates their observatory. This is Prairie Winds Observatory right here. Notice we've got—
we can't hear you. Your sound, it totally went away.
How did my sound go away? Can you hear me now? No?
Can't hear you, Eric.
Wow.
It's not muted.
I'm trying a different audio setup. Hang on.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
I switched over microphones to the laptop. I thought maybe that would do it instead.
Okay. Ellie can hear you.
Huh.
So hopefully it wasn't on my end, but your voice does sound a lot better with whatever you've got going on.
Was it better than what I had before?
I think so.
Huh. I wonder what's wrong with the Logitech then. I thought I was using the Logitech. Maybe I'm not. Oh, all right, fine. Okay. Well, thank you for stopping me on that one. Anyways, we're over at the Prairie Winds Observatory southwest of town. If you folks are going stargazing, you are welcome to visit this property, to just park there on the grass and look up at the sky. This is a place where they have open houses frequently when people are less concerned about getting sick. So we hope to reopen this when the club members feel more comfortable allowing visitors onto the site. But what I can show you for these purposes is that since it's in the middle of farmland, you don't have any trouble seeing how the sun is setting, and you will be able to see stuff very low to the horizon with very low altitudes as well. So we're going to go a little bit later into the evening. I'm not going to go too late though, because there's some stuff right there right after sunset. There is an object that you might be able to catch tonight right after the sun sets. This is the sky at 8:27. You might not be able to see it then, but it might be worth checking out if you can get a really low view over in the west and a little bit north of west. But this bright object here is actually the planet Venus. Okay, I got that right this time, didn't I? Yes, okay. And Venus is what we call our evening star at this time. Venus is actually, am I looking at the right one? Okay, yes. Venus is our evening star right now. I know it's not literally a star, but keep in mind that people thought that the planets were just wandering stars until only a few hundred years ago. So that's where it got that nickname from. And we're seeing Venus very bright. It's the first thing you'll see after sunset that's not the moon. Okay, it is at a very low altitude, so you'll see it set pretty soon after the sun does. Look at that. Yeah, see, that's it at 9 o'clock. You'll probably miss out on seeing it by this point. and you're wondering why Venus is not, going to be more visible to us. Well, what you got to do is just wait a few months. It's going to get farther and farther from the sun. So by this fall, you will see it much higher in the sky. It'll still be the evening star, but it's going to be much easier to catch at night because it'll be so much higher. All right, so that's something you've got to look forward to right there. Right next to Venus is actually another planet. This one is the planet Mercury right here. And one thing that we were doing during our CUAS meeting about a week ago was we had club members who were reminding everybody to go out and look at both Venus and Mercury. Right as the club meeting ended at about 8:40, I ran outside and had a look, and next to a crescent moon was actually the planet Mercury. Here's how it looked actually. I'll show it to you. This is the exact sky that I saw at that time. There's about 8:40 right there. So this was still high enough up that I could see it right out by my driveway. You had this very, very thin crescent moon right next to the planet Mercury. It is not often that you can see Mercury just by stepping outside, because Mercury is even closer to the sun than Venus is. And so it's really hard to catch that planet in the sky. I don't remember seeing Mercury, honestly, growing up ever. It's only now that I make these concerted efforts to look for it that I can find it in the sky. Are you getting problems with my video feed as well?
I'm thinking it must be on my end. I must be having an internet thing. So,
you know what?
Because now I'm not getting any update on your screen share.
No,
now I am.
Here's what happened. I completely forgot about this. Thank you so much. When I opened up my laptop to fix the microphone, it pauses your screen share. And I was so busy
I didn't know that.
trying to fix the microphone that I forgot to hit resume.
I did not know that. Oh my gosh. I was thinking it was a problem on my end.
No, this one was on me. Yeah. So thanks for your patience, Ellie and Barbara. I'm really sorry that everything I just talked about got kind of disconnected. How about, let me see here. We didn't even get the night sky yet, did we? And that was like at least 5 to 10 minutes of talking. I'm so sorry.
That much talking. It honestly, it's not that much talking.
Wow.
I know it feels like it when you've got a technical difficulty. Yeah. Everything seems like it's just taking so much longer. No, yeah, you were talking about how hard it is to see things that are very low to the horizon if you don't have a clear horizon. And so at that point, it wasn't until you started saying, and here it is, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not seeing Venus. Why am I not seeing Venus? Although I will point out, since you're showing it again for real now, that if you really are out at the CUAS Observatory later in the growing season, it can be hard to see at the horizon because the plants do get really tall.
That is true.
Ask me how I know that.
What is it? 6 foot high by the 4th of July? Is that right? Or
it gets tall. It does. Yeah.
Yeah, that does affect things in every direction, basically, unless you're lucky to have soy in one of the directions. That is true. And then you have the other challenges of when they're doing harvesting, that kicks up so much dust out in the fields that you get a little bit of a haze.
That messes everything. Yeah, that messes up.
Very true.
Don't even bother with trying to see the galaxies and nebulas and things.
All right. Is everybody ready to see what I was trying to show you 5 minutes ago?
Oh, thank you, Ellie and Barbara. Thank you.
All right. So you'll notice that as the sun sets here, this is at about 8:10. Remember that the way that I share this feed over Zoom is the brightness of the planets and stars is heavily amplified. So this is all a lot brighter than you would really see it in the sky. So at 8:30, you probably wouldn't be able to see those stars quite yet with all this twilight here. But I bet you could still see the planet Venus at that point. So at about 8:30 tonight, if we've got some clear skies, that'd be worth checking out. And it's actually, if you're concerned about it not being clear enough tonight to check this out, it's going to only be better over the next several days, because here's what it looks like tomorrow.
and the day after, and the day after. Notice how Venus is very, very slowly getting higher up in the sky as you go through the coming weeks. So Venus, like I said, is our evening star because it is the first thing you'll see after sunset, and it'll look like a star unless you, track how it's moving with respect to the stars. You'll also see it not twinkle nearly as much, but it's going to get pretty high up in the sky coming towards the fall. Okay, so that's where we sit with that. What day is it today? It's the 21st. Okay, so it is on the 21st. You'll notice something is right above Venus. This should be the planet Mercury. There it is. And the cool thing I wanted to share with you, and this is actually something Wayleena's husband, Jeff, had reminded us to do at the end of a CUAS meeting last week, is right as it ended on the 13th, he said, step outside to go look at the moon and Mercury, because look at what we got to see. Look at this. An extremely thin crescent moon right next to Mercury. I was so glad we had clear skies that night that we could see this, because it's kind of hard to catch a little thin crescent moon like this. But I was able to just step out onto the driveway. I didn't have to go out to the observatory at all, and I could see Mercury. I have to say, I think this was the very first time in my life I'd ever seen Mercury from my house. Mercury stays very close to the sun. It's never more than about 30 degrees, which is about 3 fist widths away from the sun. So it can be lost in the glare of the sun most of the time.
There have been a few times where on a Friday or Saturday night when Mercury's been visible in the west, where I've delayed the start of the planetarium program so that everyone could come outside.
That's wonderful.
Before the show starts, and we could see it there through the trees. There's trees there, but we were able to see it. And so even, the show would start late, but worth it.
Oh yeah.
Definitely worth it.
Yeah. I think I was telling you about how I did not see Mercury at all as a child. I think the very first time I saw Mercury was during the transit of Mercury in 2006.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I saw Mercury was its silhouette in front of the sun.
Aw, that's kind of sweet, actually.
Yeah, but it's just like, wow, I've never seen this planet before. That's just kind of how it went. It was funny. But yeah, that was very cool. All right, so if you're curious about what else is up at this time, let's go ahead and go a little later. And we'll go to about 9 p.m. That's good enough right there. And so this is about 5 after 9, and we see a fair number of stars by this point. I'm guessing you wouldn't see nearly this many, but there's a few up here. And if you're wondering about this really bright star that's just to the left of the observatory sign, this one is called Capella. Okay, there you can see the name. Actually, let me take down that catalog information. I put that up earlier, and I don't need that up now. You can see that the reason why Capella is so bright is it's actually relatively close to us. Look at that. 42 light years away is extremely far away, but compared to most things you see in the sky, it's kind of in our vicinity, all right? And so that bright star is also really close to us. If we head over to the left here, we see 2 bright stars that are almost the exact same brightness, almost as if they were twins. This one's called Pollux. This one's called Castor. And here, I'll go ahead and show you the constellation they're in. The name of the constellation is Gemini. That's why I said twins. Isn't that nice right there?
Hey, Eric, how far, I missed where you showed Pollux. How far away is Pollux?
Pollux is only 34 light years from us, which, that means that the light that we get from Pollux left that star in the 1980s. That's what we mean by light years, folks, and I didn't explain that before. When you see the term light year, it's telling you that the light traveled for that many years to get to us because of how—
I was still in high school when the light left that star.
Yeah, it's wild. There's an astronomer, a planetarium educator that lives in our area that used to work with us at Parkland. And I believe that at various points in his life, he would look at certain stars whose distances corresponded to his certain age. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of planetarium type people like doing that quirky thing. I know.
Yeah, I was just thinking with Capella that I was probably about Ellie's age when the light left.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I know he definitely did it with the star Aldebaran, which has just set right beforehand. It's a little bit lower than Venus is. That one, he was doing that when he had turned 65. So, yeah. So, yeah, but those stars are pretty bright because they're pretty close to us. Now, if you're looking for something that's even closer to us, notice there's a really bright object right above the G in Gemini that you're seeing right there. That is not a star. If it had been a star, people probably would have connected the dots with the other stars there to make it a part of that constellation.
And if it were a star, it would be my favorite.
Yes, that's very true. Here's another clue as to what this is really. If I show you the next couple of days, look at that. You see it's actually moving with respect to the stars. This object happens to be another planet. This is Mars. We usually call Mars the red planet, right? Well, here it probably looks more of a beige color. And if you look at Mars in the night sky, it probably is not obviously red, but nevertheless, I think that exaggerating that color to help define it is just fine with me. But yeah, there's your red planet right there. If you're looking at this bright object to the lower left of Gemini, this is another one of those lovely winter constellations that I like to point out. This one's really funny for us in the planetarium because when I click on Procyon right here, you see both of the stars that make up the constellation Canis Minor. Canis Minor, its name is means little dog. The big dog constellation already set. That's where you can find Sirius. Here you can see the doggy right there. But yeah, in the planetarium, because we see two stars forming a constellation, it sounds like kind of a cop-out. We usually think of it as a hot dog instead. It's, you know, it fits the shape a little bit better. All right. All right. So we'll go up a little higher here. Pay no attention to Hydra. All right. There we go. And
no one pays attention to Hydra.
Well, I notice Alphard in the sky, the brightest star in Hydra, and that's about all I can share with that one. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to head over to a different part of the sky. And I want to make sure everybody gets their bearings by finding this group of stars. It's almost directly overhead. I haven't done any annotations yet, but let's do our first drawing of the night. Ellie, I'm so glad you were able to see the moon and Mercury. That's fantastic. I'm glad you were able to hear about that. I'm pretty sure that was included in Dave's article about tonight's sky. I just can't remember if that was the case. I know I didn't remind people about it on Facebook, but I'm glad people were able to find out about that. All right, so you see I've drawn a little shape right here. Waylena, what's your favorite way that this shape is, what you see with this shape?
You know, it used to be the frying pan with the eggs cooking, but I've really been enjoying seeing it as a shark.
You have shown that shark to a lot of elementary schools.
Yeah, the kids, those little kids really got me excited about seeing it as a shark.
Well, considering each of them has seen the baby shark video about 300 times a piece, I'm not surprised. So yeah. All right. And you folks in the audience, I would love to hear what you see those as your favorite shapes, what you see when you see this shape. We love it if you use your imagination and tell us what you see with that, because if your imagination is really good, maybe, just maybe, Waylena will be so inspired and she'll make that shape and put it in the planetarium, okay? So remember, that's not a promise, that's a maybe, but Waylena does love getting ideas from you all. All right. Ellie sees a cheetah.
A cheetah.
A cheetah.
I like that.
Okay. Well, anyways, what we see here in North America, we usually see this as a big, kind of like a spoon, but more like a bowl that you use to pull water out of a water basin. And so the term we use for that is a dipper. Okay, so this is the Big Dipper right here. Barbara sees a lopsided kite. I have seen the kite with this as well. Kite's another good one, absolutely. But yes, we see this as the Big Dipper, but not everybody sees this as the Big Dipper, because when you see me click on it, notice it's actually a part of a larger constellation called Ursa Major. And Ursa Major doesn't mean Big Dipper. It doesn't mean big wagon or big shopping cart or big shark or big kite or big cheetah either. It means Big Bear. Okay, so they saw the Big Dipper as part of a much larger constellation, the Big Bear. And the reason why I wanted to turn over to look at this is because the Big Dipper is extremely useful to us, because we can take these two stars away from the handle of the Big Dipper and we can draw a line with them. They point to this star down here. That star's name is, well, it goes by a few names. It can go by the North Star, it can go by Polaris, it can go by the Pole Star, or even the Lodestar, okay? And there's another name based off of the constellation it's in as well. But usually I just call it Polaris. And you see that Polaris is part of Ursa Minor, which is the Little Bear. Notice that the stars of Ursa Minor kind of look like a Little Dipper. So if you want to call that the Little Dipper, that's what a lot of people call that here in North America, okay? So you can call it the Little Bear or the Little Dipper. And Polaris has a name because it's given to it based off of being the brightest star in Ursa Minor. Now, Polaris is not the only thing that you can point at using the Big Dipper. There's a couple of other nice examples. I'll go with the most prominent one of these first, and this is actually the brightest star you can find in the spring sky. This one, I need to draw a nice curved line for this. What you can do is you can take the handle of the Big Dipper. Notice it's kind of arced, it's kind of circular and arced. And what you want to do is you want to follow that arc to this bright star you see right there, okay? And that bright star, I just gave you a name clue for this. That bright star's name is Arcturus. We followed the arc to Arcturus. Now you'll notice it's in a constellation. I have to address this because the name's already up there. That for a lot of you, you look at that and you're thinking it's probably pronounced booties. But I'll just say it out loud. It's Boötes. Now, Barbara, you were talking about a lopsided kite. When I look at Boötes and I look at the bright stars in this constellation, I see a kite right there. And I tell my students that when I'm trying to have them see this constellation. It looks like a kite to me, or I could see it looking like a fish. But yeah, as you saw.
I like the ice cream cone.
Ice cream cone, yes, your ice cream cone idea is fantastic.
Like,
yes, and you know what? That is a great transition because it looks like our ice cream cone lost a little scoop, didn't it? Here, let's go ahead and show you where that scoop went. We're gonna go ahead and make a left turn from where I was trying to go. And we'll click on this bright star right here. I gotta remember that that star's name is Alphecca, okay?
It has another name though too, doesn't it?
Probably, there's lots of them.
I think it's also, is it also called Gemma or Gemma? Like with two M's?
I don't remember.
You keep going, I'm gonna look that up.
I eagerly await what you find here. Anyways, what Lena's referring to is that the kite part of this can also look like an ice cream cone. You see the scoop of ice creams here, but the missing scoop, apparently you had to have two scoops for this, fell off. And maybe some of you have had a scoop of an ice cream cone where you lost one of your scoops in a horrible travesty. But that scoop is sitting right over here in this area that looks kind of like a little U shape or a backward C. And the constellation it's a part of, here I'll go give you some artwork. Notice it looks like a lovely little crown. And this is the constellation known as the Northern Crown. And that constellation's name has become a lot more famous lately because in Latin, the word for Northern Crown is Corona Borealis. Corona just means crown, folks. And in fact, because we have to address this since I'm doing this show from here and not in the dome, the reason why the coronavirus is called that is because the people who named those coronaviruses, there's many of them, they saw how they kind of looked like the corona of the sun during a total solar eclipse. So those microbiologists, they had a lot of interest in astronomy as well. Fun thing to think about. All right. People would
it is also known as gemma.
Oh, cool.
Latin for jewel. So yeah.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, so jewel in the crown.
I wonder if there's I wonder if the folks who put the names in here for Stellarium, they're limiting them to a lot of these stars now having official names with the International Astronomical Union. I wonder if Gemma is.
Well, Gemma is one of many because it's got quite a few other names that I wouldn't even begin to pronounce.
Mm-hmm.
And Alphecca is sometimes spelled with K's instead of C's. Like anybody really wanted to know that. I just thought Gemma stuck in my head because of the being like a jewel in the crown.
Yeah, I could see that definitely. It is a bejeweled crown. I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and do one other constellation we can point at using the Big Dipper here. I get to draw another line. Everybody's extremely happy about this. We're going to not go to Polaris. We're not going to Arcturus. We are going to take these two stars and we're going to point down here, okay? And you end up pointing in this general area down here where you can find what looks like a little backwards question mark. Or you could see it as a hook, or you could see it as a sickle. And that's actually what generally people call that right there. That's the sickle. Then we've got this little triangle here as well. And then if you connect the sickle to that triangle in this fashion, what you are seeing right there is where you have the constellation Leo. Okay, so one way I help people remember this is that you could take these two stars and you could just leap to Leo right there. All right, so we just leapt to Leo in that fashion. All right, now if you want to know about the brightest star in Leo, I will point to that in just a moment, but I want to get there in a different fashion. We already did our arc to Arcturus, and if we, pardon me for moving around so much, I've already arc to Arcturus, and here I'll zoom out so I can see this a little bit better. There we go. This is a big part of the sky. That's the problem. We arc to Arcturus, and now if we spike on down, we can find the star known as Spica, which is in the constellation Virgo. You can see how Spica itself represents a shock of wheat. That's actually where the name Spica comes from. The reason for that is because the maiden Virgo, the sun is in the constellation Virgo around the time of the harvest, or at least it used to be a couple thousand years ago. So that's where it got its name there. And I believe, Waylena, if you want to correct me on this regarding the mythology, I thought Virgo is meant to represent the goddess Demeter, who is the goddess of the hearth or the harvest, right? Perhaps, you know, I'm not a mythologist.
Yeah.
That's all good. All right.
I usually have been focused on Persephone and the pomegranate seed, so there's lots of mythology going on.
Right, Persephone is allowed to be out of Hades for half the year, and then she's down there for half the year, and that's meant to coincide with how the crops are alive and dead and all that stuff, right? So
the amazing thing is how so many different people throughout history have used the stars and put characters in the stars and used the cycles of the sky to tie in with those stories. And then when you see this part of the sky tying in so strongly with agriculture, it's just wonderful. That, to me, that's always my favorite part, is how it all ties in together with then the cycles of everyday lives. And so the harvest became was definitely important, but recorded in the sky in this way.
Right, because people would pass down culture and knowledge through these stories. So what they were doing is they would be almost keeping a calendar. So you weren't marking down dates on a tablet or something. You would use the sky and say, oh, I'm seeing these stars. I need to start sowing the seeds at this moment. Or I see all of those water constellations like Capricornus, Aquarius, Pisces, and I know that and since the sun's, I see them at this time of the year, I know that the monsoon, the heavy rains that come in this season are about to arrive. So I think that's the connection, but yeah. Darn it, it's like there's just this whole wealth of knowledge that I can't remember all of it. That's all right. Okay, now, Ellie brings up a really funny point about Leo, and I'm gonna get back to Leo in just a second. I've already gone in Arc to Arcturus, I spike to Spica, and I usually like to make a right turn to Regulus. I actually prefer to do that over leaping to Leo from the Big Dipper. But Ellie apparently saw Leo looking like a horse rather than a lion. That is an interesting alternative explanation there. Waylena, would you like to tell everybody what you see instead of a lion, or at least saw?
Yeah, definitely. No, I still do. I still do. I mean, although I've trained myself to be able to see Leo the lion over the years, boy, when I was a kid, several years in a row, I tried because I had a lot of light pollution, but I had that little window every year where I could see Leo up above the light pollution, just that one little narrow space. And I would see, yep, a giant mouse. Now, nowhere near as fun as the mouse that Eric has been drawing here, which, you know, has its little twitchy whiskers and is going squeak, squeak, squeak all over the sky. But yeah, I couple years in a row. I mean, I had all my books, my star charts and maps and things. I even had where I took a coat hanger, like a metal coat hanger, which, you know, we used to have back in the old days. I get to sound old when I say it like that, I know. And I took clear plastic wrapped it around after I shaped it into a rectangle. And I lined it up with a star map. I took like whiteout paint and I put the stars in the spots for it so I could hold it up. So, you know how in the planetarium we have these pictures, these overlay pictures that we could present. Well, I made my own out of this coat hanger with plastic cling film, right? And I was doing that, and I still could not really imagine the lion, but a mouse. Oh, now that I could imagine. But it could be because honestly, as a kid, I saw a lot more mice than I saw lions.
That is truly fair. Yeah. I can imagine how often you'd see a mouse. That's right. So
that's an awesome mouse.
Thank you. I should have drawn it more like Mickey Mouse so we could get a takedown notice from Disney. That would have been a lot of fun too. All right. So anyways, here, I'll go ahead and zoom out. Those are our brightest constellations that we can see in the spring sky, but we've got a couple more fun ones to show you. I already showed you our lovely Corona Borealis. I will bring up another one of Waylena's favorites here in a moment. This one is one that can kind of throw you off when you see it in the night sky. It's right there between Boötes and Leo. If you see this almost fuzzy spot taken up by a number of stars, I don't want to click on it too quickly to just give away the name. So let me turn these off here. But here again, Arcturus, there's Regulus. And right over here in the spot that I'm circling, you see a number of little stars right there next to each other. And let me connect the dots now.
It looks like a wishbone.
Yeah, that doesn't really illustrate it well at all. I like the wishbone explanation for it. That's really good. Here, I'll give you some artwork for it. And this can be really jarring and confusing if you've never seen this before. What you are looking at is a shock of hair. This is the constellation called Coma Berenices, which just means Berenice's hair. Okay, so not all of Berenice, just her flowing locks. That's all you're seeing here. And yeah, we've got this little cluster of stars that it looks like right there. And in fact, that's not the only thing that's clustered there. There's actually also a bunch of galaxies in that part of the sky. There's a famous galaxy cluster in that constellation that they named the Coma Cluster because it's in the constellation Coma Berenices. Okay, so you can see that right there. Waylena, do you ever show people the spring diamond?
No, that's not. Yeah, that's not one that was really on the radar. It wasn't a big.
I saw it listed once, and I think it's in the database that we have for our software, for our Digistar software. So I don't know if people are actually interested in it. I mention this because sometimes people like to have prominent triangles. We love showing the winter triangle. We bring up the summer triangle all the time, but we're in spring right now, and we need to show you a big spring shape. So I already did Arcturus. I already did Spica. The tail of the lion is called Denebola, which literally just means the tail of the lion. Isn't that nice? And then there's another star just above Coma Berenices. That's the brightest star in the constellation of the hunting dogs. It's called Cor Caroli or Cor Caroli. Do you say Caroli or Caroli?
Me?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I didn't know. I know that you have more of these accepted pronunciations for people.
You know, I was taught accepted pronunciations at various points, but I also have a real soft spot for not pronouncing correctly because I learned from the books and did not have the internet and things like that. So
yeah, that's why I still say Vega instead of Vega. But I got corrupted by the Street Fighter video games 30 years ago.
I go back and forth on Vega and Vega, and I try to be consistent within any one talk, but I go back.
Not a problem.
Back and forth.
So you could say Cor Caroli or Cor Caroli right here. I think it's meant to represent the heart of something. I don't think it looks like the heart of the hunting dogs right there, but these are Boötes' hunting dogs, aka Canis venetici. So yeah, there are multiple dog constellations up there in the sky, but Cor Caroli is not that bright because, you know, it's a little farther from us than some of these other stars, but it helps complete a nice spring diamond right here from Arcturus to Spica to Denebola, and then finishing off with Cor Caroli right there. So there's your spring diamond if you wanted to help anchor that part of the sky for yourselves. And as you just heard in our discussion, it's not one that's terribly famous, but it's one that I felt like sharing. Another fun one to share for you all is actually just below where Virgo is. And I won't give this away again, just like I tend not to. Right here, you can see this star here, and we've got 4 stars forming a much smaller diamond. And here I'll show you the artwork. And the artwork doesn't show you a diamond at all. In fact, it shows you a crow. You are seeing a crow right there. This is the constellation Corvus, which just means the crow. Wheelina, do you know any sort of mythology that connects Virgo to Corvus at all? Or any stories you've heard about this constellation?
I don't recall.
That's okay.
I always get distracted with Corvus because when I was playing in Scrabble tournaments, Corvine is a really nice word to know because you can score bingo points getting rid of a C and a V in the same
Nice. Word. Yeah, that's a good Corvine. It
means crow-like, Corvine.
Yeah, and you'll see a biological term for certain crow-like birds. They're called corvids. So that's another one. So we're helping you win at Scrabble. You're welcome, everybody. All right, but yeah, there's Corvus, the crow right there. Let's see here. What was the other thing that I wanted to mention? I'm completely forgetting. Oh, yes. If you were curious, you'll notice that the moon happens to be in the constellation Virgo right now. You might realize that Virgo and Leo are some of your more famous constellations, and they seem to be kind of lined up with each other. And if we head back over here, you'll notice that they're actually kind of lined up with Gemini as well. And in between Gemini and Leo is another famous constellation, but not a bright one, that's for certain. And that one is the constellation known as Cancer. There's Cancer right there. So notice we went from Gemini to Cancer to Leo to Virgo. So what you are seeing right there are the constellations of the zodiac. And what's great is that if you can identify some of the constellations of the zodiac, you now can see the path taken by the sun through the sky. You can see the path taken by the planets as well, and the path taken by the moon. Okay, so this is one of the many clues that people have taken for thousands of years to help them connect the sun, the moon, and the planets all to each other because they have pretty close motions through the sky with each other. So that's your zodiac right there. Remember how I was showing you Venus and Mercury before? Well, those two planets are actually in the constellation Taurus at this time. There's Taurus's horns that have already set at this moment. And if you know your zodiac very well, you'll know the next one after Virgo happens to be Libra, the scales. And Waylina's favorite star is just coming up right now, and that's a part of the constellation Scorpius. But we usually don't talk about Scorpius in the spring. It's more of a summer constellation. You'll see it at earlier hours later this summer. Okay, but yeah, look at that. Look at that nice arc of the zodiac across.
You're looking at the solar system from the inside out.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, if you want to see the exact path the sun takes, there's a line for this. We call it the ecliptic. You can see it right there. You can see exactly how the sun moves across the sky. Notice that the moon is actually slightly above the ecliptic at this time. And that brings up another great point about an upcoming sky event. If you folks are interested in watching this. When the moon happens to be right on the ecliptic, and when the moon actually is at the right phase, you can actually have eclipses. That's what I mentioned to my students to help them remember what the name of this line is. When the moon's on the ecliptic, you can have eclipses. And 5 days from now, really 4.5 days from now, there is going to be an eclipse. Let me show you what it's going to look like at that time. I'm going to turn off all of these constellations here and their artwork because they're just going to get in the way. So I'm going to go up 4 days now. All right. So there, it's it's May 25th, and really funny. And look at that. The full moon, it's almost perfectly full, but not totally perfectly full. And you see at about 9:34 on May 25th, the moon is very, very close to the ecliptic. Let's go a few hours later here now, okay? And we're gonna go, that's 10:34 at night, 11:34, 12:34, 1:34, I'll center on it again, 2:34, and 3:34. Now, something interesting is about to start happening. So let's zoom in on the moon now, okay? And we don't need that ecliptic thing up anymore, so we'll leave that alone. Oh, hey, look at that. Did you see that? It was really subtle. Okay, here, I'll go back an hour so you can see this again. I know the sky gets brighter there as it gets closer to dawn because this is now 4:22 in the morning. But notice you see the moon got a little bit darker there. That's not something you'll notice, obviously. That's the moon starting to have its sunlight partially blocked by Earth. The moon is actually passing into Earth's shadow. And you'll notice it very nicely starting at about 4:45 on the morning of May 26th. Unfortunately, though, here in Champaign, you're not going to see this whole event because take a look at that. By about 5:30, the moon will have set. Over in the western part of the US, the moon will fall entirely into Earth's shadow and you will have a total lunar eclipse, but you won't be able to see that from Champaign because the moon will have set by that point. And if you're curious, because you're seeing the moon when it's full setting at 5:18, if we look back over in the eastern sky, take a look at this, you can actually see the sun is just about to come up. It's actually behind the building here. There it is. Yeah, it's just below the horizon. Okay. But yeah, during a total lunar eclipse, the moon ends up falling behind Earth's shadow. Earth gets in the way and blocks the light from reaching the moon, so the moon looks noticeably dimmer. And you can actually see it kind of look red. A term that's been going around the internet a lot in the last several years is that they want to call these a blood moon. It might not look that bloody, but it'll certainly have that orange reddish appearance to it if you actually see a total lunar eclipse. Now, I'm going to write this into the chat. If you folks want to see a proper total lunar eclipse from where you live, pretty much the entirety of the United States is going to be able to see a total lunar eclipse on May 15th of next year, okay? It'll happen right before midnight, I believe. But yeah, May 15th of next year, just mark that in your calendars. You'll be able to see a total lunar eclipse. What's really nice is that all you have to be is on a part of our planet where you can actually see the moon when it's behind Earth's shadow. So you don't really have to travel for a lunar eclipse. It will just, you'll see it when you can see the moon. It's really
And
fun.
hopefully by then we'll all be able to be back in the planetarium, and we will remind you about it as it gets closer. And hopefully we can even have a party for observing together for
Absolutely.
folks who stay up that late. So yay.
We have done those sorts of events in the past. Yeah, weather permitting, of course. All right. Now, is that enough eclipses for you? No? You want to see another one? Well, I'll show you another one that will be tantalizing in similar ways. Let's go up 2 weeks from now. Notice that by 2 weeks, I'm talking about roughly half of the moon's orbit around Earth. So the moon's going to go from being about full to going to the new phase of the moon. So let's see what it looks like then. All right, where's that moon? Moon's right next to the sun. Very nice. Here, you can see the moon's right there. I need to go 1 day further into the future. Oh, the moon's right in the way. I need to make this not fake. Hang on 1 second. I totally forgot about this feature, but I didn't think about it beforehand. Here we go. I make my moons huge when I'm showing this over Zoom. We'll do it this way instead. We're gonna go back a couple hours like this.
It happens to us in the dome all the time because we use an exaggerated moon and sun, but we have to shrink them back down to show eclipses. We also have to remember to turn the Earth on too. That can mess us up.
So for people who wanted to know what date this is on the morning of June 10th, of the 10th of June right here. And you'll watch and see what's about to happen right now. Slow it down just a little bit more than that. So the moon is passing in front of the sun. So in this situation, the moon's between the sun and Earth, and it's blocking sunlight from reaching us. So we have what we'd see on Earth as a solar eclipse. But notice how large the moon is at this point. You see, it looks like it's not going to cover up all of Earth. So from a couple of places on our planet, the moon is actually going to get right in between Earth and the sun. But since it can't cover up all of the sun, you'd have what looks like a ring of the sun around it. Some people like to call this a ring of fire. The technical term is an annular eclipse. Okay, here, I'll write the word in the chat for you all. Annular. Okay. And it just means that you see this ring of the sun right there. Notice from Champagne, we wouldn't see it all be blocked. If you want to actually go and see this sort of thing, you need to spend a lot of money and go to a very remote place on Earth for it, because this annular eclipse will be visible in eastern Russia, over the North Pole, and into various lightly inhabited portions of Canada. Okay, I don't know if it reaches like Winnipeg, but it's going through like Manitoba and Saskatchewan and stuff. If you want to see one of these yourselves, I don't remember the exact date of it, but I know that it's in October of 2023, and it will be visible over the western part of the US. It will go through actually New Mexico and Texas and stuff, if you want to plan a trip for that. I actually planned a trip myself for one of these things about 9 years ago because I wanted to see an annular eclipse myself.
I got to see one.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it was, gosh, what was that? 1994.
The 94 eclipse?
Yes.
That was the first eclipse I remember. Yeah.
That was a great year, since that was also when, just a few months, well, yeah, a couple months later is when that comet hit Jupiter.
Right.
That was a great year.
Yeah, that was good stuff. That was actually the first eclipse I ever remember. My middle school teacher, well, junior high school, my middle school teacher, she took each of us outside, and she set up one of those shoebox viewers and showed us how the sun was partially blocking Earth. We didn't have an annular eclipse in the Chicago suburbs, but we had a partial eclipse at that time. So that was still very cool to see. Anyways, if you folks are curious about what we see from Champagne, I'm about to show you what's happening. Here, it is clearly below the horizon. Where did my horizon go? There it is. All right. And, oh, I didn't realize the Pleiades were coming up before sunrise. That's so fun. All right, let's watch this. So there's the sun trying to come up. The sun's going to come up, you know, a little bit after 5 a.m. And you'll watch and see how little of this event we're going to see in Champaign.
Yeah.
No, wait, stay longer, stay. So at 5:30, the sun is barely above the horizon, and you see that the moon has almost completely stopped covering the sun. What's really cool about this possible event is that you can see the sun eclipsed by the moon at sunrise. Perhaps you might steal a glance. You know, we all steal glances at the sun at sunrise or sunset. And if you look at the sun at that time, you might be able to see that little chunk that's bit out of the sun at that point. But if you want to have a long-term look at the sun, you need to grab those eclipse glasses that you might have used before, okay? If you still have them from 2017, break them out for this because that's the safest way to look at this. And then notice that within the next 5 minutes, the event's over. Right there is 5:38 a.m. and it's all done.
Say, Eric.
Yeah.
That's just not enough eclipses.
You're right. Are you saying you want to see a total solar eclipse?
Yes.
Okay, well, here's another point for you folks to mark your calendars. April 8th of 2024. 2024, April 8th. This will happen going over Illinois, going over Indiana, going over Ohio, not quite hitting, I don't know, is it going over your dad's house in Youngstown? It's really close, right?
It's you know what? No, he'll have to go across town. And my sister in Ohio, she lives 2 blocks away from the edge.
It's worth the trip.
It's worth the trip. Yes.
Yeah. The CUAS is actually making plans right now to set up an event here in Champaign. 98% of the sun will be covered, but you must, if you can swing it, go to a place where the sun will be completely covered. The only other warning I have to give you now is that since it's in April, the weather is usually not favorable for this part of the country. If you go to a place that's drier in April, you'll have better odds of seeing this event, okay? It's happening on a Monday. That's when April 8th is. And I know that the best part of this eclipse will be in Mexico, and it'll probably be pretty good in Texas because I'm imagining they won't get that much, many clouds either. So you've been forewarned. Go and try to see one of these total solar eclipses if you haven't done so yet. All right. So I've shown you some cool events. I've shown you lots of spring constellations. Let's head back to today. Let me give you that. And let's go ahead and show you what the sky will look like tomorrow morning. There we go. Wonderful. All right. So, folks, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you enjoy the stargazing. Maybe you'll see a little bit of those eclipses and they'll just whet your appetite for one of the future events where we see the whole shebang. But do you folks have any questions or requests that you'd like to hear from us?
If not, I can echo. I can just echo what Eric said. For the total solar eclipse, Champaign area is what percentage are we again, Eric?
98%.
Just remember that 98 or 99% is nothing. I mean, even 99.9% is not the same as totality. It is an entirely different experience. And one of the things I'm most grateful for is that I did get to see the total solar eclipse in 2017. By the time I found out I'd be able to go, it was too late to get any of the places that were nearby. So we went to Nebraska, and it was wonderful, and it was magical. It was just magical. So please, if you get a chance, do that. Don't settle for 99.9% or 98%. It's worth it to get out there. Ooh, we got questions.
Yes. So let me hit Ellie's first here, talking about a lynx. One of the younger constellations is the lynx. In fact, in the CUAS, we used to do a constellation of the month, and we had one club member talk about this constellation, and he shared this during the virtual Family Skywatch last week. And I'm going to show you how you find the lynx, because I found it by accident an hour ago. All right, so let me go ahead and show you the sky tonight again. All right, there we go. Now you remember we were showing you the Big Dipper, right? So there's our Big Dipper right there, okay? And it's part of the constellation of Ursa Major again. Now, when I'm looking at the Big Dipper myself, when I'm looking at Ursa Major myself, one thing that I do by mistake is sometimes I take the take these stars that represents the legs of the bear and extend them out a little too far. I extend them out to these two stars right here. Okay, so you saw where I just connected those. And now you're going to see exactly what comes up when I click on what those two stars are a part of. This looks like a very odd animal, but that is meant to represent the lynx. Okay, it is not very bright, these stars that make up the lynx, but you see they're right above Cancer and Gemini and right next to the bear. Okay, so just a little rival predator action right there. And it is up during most of the night because it is another one of those northern constellations. In fact, you'll notice that it doesn't really fully set at all. Okay, so there you see it going later and later into the night. It might have a little bit of it set, but not all of it. All right, the lynx's head should stay above the horizon the whole night. Okay, so there's lynx for you. Yeah, they made it look very strange because they wanted the stars to represent all of it right there.
I tried to bring in one of my cats into the room that was meowing on the other side of the door, thinking, well, you know, she could do a lynx impression, but she decided she didn't want to come in after all.
There are some funny lynx videos out there, like two lynxes that were kind of yelling at each other, and they make some weird noises. It's really funny stuff.
Well, so does that cat of mine. So
oh, that's very true.
Yeah, it was Carmen. She
yes.
wanted in, but she decided she didn't want in.
Now we got another great question here about a radio telescope on the far side of the moon. I love this idea, but it has not been implemented yet. The really great promise of having a telescope on the far side of the moon is that it would eliminate most of the interference that we would get from radio signals coming from Earth. All we'd have to make sure we do is actually find a way to relay those signals back to Earth. So we'd have to send some sort of other telescope out there to constantly receive those signals back, or at least get frequent relays.
Run a cable all the way to the near side of the moon.
It's connected via fiber optic. That's perfect. I was thinking about putting it at the spot, one of those Lagrangian points, but that obviously is not going to hit it all the time. You almost have to have two setups at both Lagrangian points to be able to get proper coverage. So you'd have to relay the signal, but I love the possibility. So that's a really neat idea. It is something that people have talked about, having telescopes on the moon, because it wouldn't have the atmosphere that Earth has, and it wouldn't have the interference of most Earth-based technology. So that's what I can tell you. Waylena, do you have anything to add about far side of the moon instruments?
I would worry about greater possibility of impacts from meteorites, but that I think they could deal with. I think they could construct something that would be able to hold up.
Yeah. Now, this reminds me of another little bit of Cold War paranoia. Waylena, are you familiar with the Vela satellites?
Not much, just a little.
That's okay. That's okay. I don't know what part of the U.S. military this was, but they were convinced, or at least they got the suspicion that the Soviet Union was going to start testing nuclear weapons on the far side of the moon, because why not? And so their way to monitor for this possibility was by sending satellites way out there, much farther than most of our satellites are situated. And this was the Vela constellation of satellites. I don't think they were farther than the moon's orbit, but they were pretty far, at least a fourth of the way out there. So 60,000 miles overhead or further. And those satellites were designed to look for gamma radiation, because nuclear weapons release gamma rays. Okay, and that would be an easy way to detect if something was going on. All right. Now, what was wild about these satellites was that they found gamma rays, not from the far side of the moon, not from anything artificial, but they were the first detections of what we call gamma ray bursts. And then the US military sat on this evidence for 4 years before they finally shared it with the astronomical community. So gamma ray bursts were discovered by the US military 4 years before actual astronomers knew anything about them. And then it took them several decades to get a good understanding of how a lot of them actually work. There are many different weird gamma ray bursts out there, and they're extremely strange, and in most cases, extremely distant. Our best understanding of them, at least the ones that I recall off the top of my head, a lot of them are associated with crazy formations of black holes, and especially with the formation of supermassive black holes. Okay, wild stuff.
I'm laughing because my husband let that cat in, and so she is meowing, and she has a definite meow.
I drowned it out with my rambles.
That's all right. That's all right. Eric, I just noticed a change in our participants list.
Oh, hello. We have another participant. Maybe he can correct me about the Vela satellites. I don't know. Hi, Dave. Glad you could join us. I didn't collect tickets as people walked in the door, but that's all right. All right. Well, folks, do you have any other questions for us tonight?
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll get the YouTube video up sometime, probably sometime in the morning.
Yeah, and that YouTube video is going to have a good 5-minute sequence where we find out that I stopped sharing for a little bit. That was a lot of fun. But anyways, our next show is going to be 2 weeks from now. That I believe is on the 4th of June. Okay.
Ooh, Ellie asks, what would happen if you fell through Jupiter? Ellie, I would not recommend falling into Jupiter. You would get crushed.
We have sent some things to fall into Jupiter. I will tell you that much. Yep. So just it's basically just like Waylena said, you would get crushed, and it's just the same sort of problem that happens when you send something down deep into Earth's oceans. Humans get crushed by Earth's oceans, and they would get crushed even in the atmosphere of Jupiter, because you'd have so much pressure on you, you would get crushed. We actually have a planet just like Earth that has such an atmosphere where even the air would crush you, and that's Venus. Venus's atmosphere is so thick, if you're on the surface, you experience 90 times the amount of atmospheric pressure you experience right now. And it's almost like if you were to dive half a mile underneath the surface in our oceans. Okay, so yeah, you would get crushed. And eventually it would get so hot that you'd get melted too, and then boiled away.
Crushed, melted, and boiled away. That
Yay.
does not sound like a fun time.
Yay. There you go.
Great question, Ellie. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
those are great questions. All right. So as I said, yeah, if you have other questions, that's fantastic. We'll keep this running to answer any more Q&A you have, but you're also welcome to join us once again in 2 weeks. We're still running these bi-weekly. And so at 7 p.m. on the 4th of June, we'll have another edition and another edition of Spring Prairie Skies. So thank you all so much.